Hey, Mr. Smith here. So here's the video on how you do your results. So what we need to do is we need to look. Okay, so to start with, you need to make sure that you have a way of recording all your data. And if you look at the plan video that I've made, you will see a template very similar to this one, and it just shows you how to record it. That all needs to be recorded clearly as evidence that you've followed the process, and that the numbers that you've generated match to whether or not you've been successful or not. So a marker will be checking to see if when you say it's a successful trial, that your numbers match that. So that needs to be nice and clear. That's really important. You've also got to make sure that your random number section is big enough to fit the maximum number of numbers you're going to generate. So there's no good having a tiny little column and then seeing that as you get to like 10 or 11 attempts, you actually don't have any room and they're all smushed together and you can't see. So make sure that's big enough to fit your numbers in. Cool. So the things you're going to need to calculate once you've collected all your data is you will need to calculate your probability of winning. Now you'll need to do that no matter what. So this calculation should be done no matter what, no matter which situation you're given. This calculation will be done. Always calculate this. Get the total number of successful outcomes and divide it by the number of trials. Nice and simple. You might want to times that by 100 to get into. Okay, so another measurement or another calculation you may need to do is the average number of attempts. So if in your work there's been maybe when you were successful you stopped going, you didn't have to keep getting the same number of attempts per trial, then you might want to calculate this as well to say, or on average, how many attempts did it take to win, for example. So you do that by getting the total number of attempts, you divide it by the total number of trials. So just to reiterate, you only use this if you stop a trial before the maximum number of attempts. So you've been successful before you get to the total number. Okay, so here are some ways that you might write your results down. So you might say, so your total number of successful outcomes, in this case this was some data collected from the Finding Nemo simulation, was 10 out of a total number of 30 trials. So to get the probability, you go 10 divided by 30, times that by 100, 33%. So then we need to put that into a sentence. You might say something along the lines of, from my simulation, I can estimate that the probability of winning by getting all 4 letters is 33%. So just using the fact that it's from your simulation. Okay, so for the other calculation you might want to do, in this case it worked because as you can see from the far right hand column that sometimes the person was successful before reaching the maximum number of 10. So in some of the trials they got them in 4 or 5 or 6. So they were finishing their trials off before reaching the maximum number of attempts. So in there we've got the total number of attempts, that's adding up all of the numbers in that far right hand column, came to 255. You divide that by 30, the number of trials you did, and you get 8.5. So you might write that as a statement. From my simulation I can estimate that the average number of attempts taken to win is 8.5, so in real life that's 9 attempts. So those two, you need to have at least one of those two calculations in. I always suggest going for the probability. That will be relevant in every single simulation that you do. And you need to state that statement that's written down in green. You need to write this to pass. My results are just estimates, and if I were to conduct a similar simulation, I would likely end up with different results. You need to acknowledge that you've just got estimates. Okay, so just to recap, record all your results. Be real careful about how you record them. Make sure you're being accurate when you record them. Estimate the probability using that equation. In certain circumstances, you'll work out the average number of attempts that you need. Write your results in sentences and state that your results are just estimates. Cool. I hope that's helpful. And remember, better never stops.